Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with Niilo of Insomnium, not to talk about Insomnium, not to talk about the band, about a new album or whatever it is that you're working on, but to talk about the man himself and the bands that influence you to start your own band and perhaps pick up the bass and start playing. How's it going?
Thank you, Pedro. All good here in Finland. It's nice and snowy outside, not too cold. Actually, good weather to go outside and do some outside stuff. Once in a while.
I think we're going through the same weather in Toronto and Canada right now. It's not that cold, but some snow outside. So it's nice kind of weather to go even for a nice walk.
Exactly. I prefer this than the dark, wet winter. That's really horrible. A little bit snow, a little bit cold. That's good.
I'm also not a big fan of a lot of heat.
Yeah, well, in Finland and in Canada, you don't have that problem.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have a lot of things to worry about as far as heat. We have like 1 month of summer. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we get started with your list, I want to ask you this. How old were you when you picked up the bass? And was the bass the first instrument that you gravitated to, or you kind of just tried other things and then you finally settled yourself on the bass?
Well, let's not go to the first artist pick yet, but I was fascinated by synthesizers as a small kid. And I played around with them and I searched through the sounds, and I couldn't really play anything, but I was just fascinated by the synths. Actually, bass guitar was the first real instrument that I started playing with. So I was 14, a delicate age when you find your own thing. Bass was my thing, and here we are now, many years later.
Did you take any lessons, or you were kind of self-taught?
Self-taught. Like some of my friends who started playing a bit earlier, they showed me some basic stuff, and I started learning by myself. So like the music, the theory side is not so great. Me, I studied a lot myself, harmonies and chords and stuff like that. So I can manage. I can do some composing and stuff. But like if you ask me some weird scales, I don't have any idea what those are. I'm a self-taught.
It's not necessarily. I mean, I think you've done pretty good for yourself.
I've managed, yes.
At what point when you start playing the bass did you feel like, wow, like maybe I can make a career out of this? Maybe I can be a musician. Was it close from the time you started, or it took you a while to get to that point?
It took a long while. I was 14 when I started the first band. It was kind of mishmash. We played some Metallica covers and Nirvana and Alice in Chains and then some punk songs, Finnish songs, all kind of stuff. We were really young, just learning what it is to be in a band, play together, that kind of stuff. I had another band, more like a grunge band, and after that, when I was already 17, we formed Insomnium, and still it took a long time before I started thinking that actually this could be my a profession. I could take it kind of seriously and make some money. That came a lot later. Kids don't go into metal for money. Do it if you love it.
How supportive were your parents? Because I always feel like it's important to have the support of the family if you're a musician, and if you start to see the idea, if you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel that maybe one day I can pay the bills with my music. Were your parents very supportive?
They've been very supportive from the start. They've always supported me in everything I've done in life, and like my mother is my biggest fan, Insomnium's biggest fan, and mom and dad, they've both been very supportive. I remember the first time I told my father that, okay, I might leave my day job because I have to tour so much. He was a bit worried. Are you sure? Boy, are you sure you know what you're doing? But that was the only thing. He didn't really question it. He was just a bit worried. Of course, dads are always worrying what the kids are doing. I understand his point perfectly, but I've been doing fine ever since, and he hasn't been worried.
I think maybe he was worried that if things didn't go well for you, you would move back into the house and then you would have to pay your bills.
Yeah, of course. That's what his idea.
Wow, you were really young when you started the band. When you look back at those early days of the band, and you look at where you are now, do you have the sensation of how naive you were, how blind you were to the music industry, to the whole world? And do you question sometimes, how the hell did we made it all the way to where we are now?
Very good questions. Like I was 17, and Ville and Marcus, drummer, they were 16. But we were really teenagers, and we had no idea how the music business worked. What does it mean to go on tour? How do you get an agent, manager? How do you do anything? We had no idea. We had to learn everything. And we didn't know what to do in a studio, how to record album. We had to learn everything. And I would say like the first couple of albums were a learning process. So we got the hang of what to do in the studio and how to actually arrange the songs so that it's interesting. And the third album, we kind of found how we want to do it, how Insomnium is gonna sound. So About the Weeping World, it's kind of where we sort of reached I think we reached a certain level and then we stayed there, or depends who you ask, but it took a couple of albums to learn the craft. And of course, it's been a long journey, and I'm now 41, so I started when I was 17, so everybody can figure out how much we've changed.
Yeah, for sure. Getting into your list, we're going to go in chronological order of influences. So we're starting off. You're the first person that I have this session with, and we talk about influences, either guitar players, bassists, or bands in general. You're the first person to mention this man. And I was really excited because I grew up listening to him as well. But I honestly thought I was in the minority. Maybe we still are in the minority. I don't think there's a lot of metalheads that listen to Jean-Michel Jacques as one of their influences.
The same feeling. But he's clearly like my childhood hero. The first artist that I remember that I really loved. I was like 6 years old. My parents had this cassette, some kind of collection of Jean-Michel Jacques, some of his best songs. And I kept listening to it, and I was dancing by myself in the living room, just go with the flow. I just love the music. Ever since I've loved the stuff. And of course, it feels so nostalgic now when I listen to the songs and I remember how it was when I was a kid. Actually, it has influenced me also as a composer a lot, and kind of my sense of melody. I realize that, okay, like this somehow reminds me of Jean-Michel Jacques. I realized that I've done something that I've been subconsciously influenced by him later. So it's a big influence to me. And like I said, ever since I've been really fascinated with synthesizers. And now that in recent years, I've had the opportunity of actually buying something myself and play around with the sounds, and I just love that stuff.
I listened to him as a kid. My brother had the vinyl, and I remember my first experience was not even with the vinyl, was watching one of his music videos. And I thought that he was just like, I don't know, like Beethoven. Like this guy was like, he was so artistic. He had such a charisma, such a personality, but the sounds that he was making with the synthesizers at that time, I don't think there was anybody even coming close to what he was doing. He was so outside the box.
He was a pioneer, like Beethoven with lasers.
Yeah.
So cool. I loved it. I still love it. And latest album, which came out a couple of years ago, I think, well, you can't compare it with the old stuff, but still it had some really, really nice parts and a couple of really good songs. So I've been following him also lately.
Oh, wow. The next band on your list is Queen. How old were you and how did you discover Queen?
I think it was a time when TV, they started to show that in Finland. And I think we moved to a house which had a cable connection, and then suddenly MTV was available and I was like 9-10 years old. Of course, I started watching what is coming from the telly and all these music videos from the late 80s. So I observed a lot of stuff there, and Queen had some really cool videos at that time. I remember Miracle album had come out, and Invisible Man, and Breakthrough, and I Want to Break Free, all kind of really, really epic songs and videos. They were funny videos and great songs, really catchy stuff. Queen greatest hits, the number one was probably the first album that I bought with my own money. It was a cassette, and I was maybe 11. So when I was 11, 12, Queen was the number one, and before I got into metal, it was Queen.
It's funny, we have a lot of the same influences growing up. My brother had all the vinyls, all the Queen, everything that Queen released he had. So I the first memory I have of Queen was looking at one of the vinyls, looking at the cover, and my brother asked me, "Who do you think is the lead singer?" And I pointed to the drummer because he had the blonde hair and he looked like the front man. And he's like, "No, this guy with the mustache."
Yeah.
And I was like, "He's the front man? Who listens to him?" That was even before I heard a single song. So it was kind of an interesting way. I'll never forget that day.
Drummer looked coolest.
Yeah, once you hear him, you're like, okay, now I know why he's the front man. What a voice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the movie was really, really good. And this Freddie Mercury movie, and I was literally crying half of the time, especially in the end with the whole Live Aid. I was crying 20 minutes.
The Live Aid was
movie.
You remember when it happened, when Live Aid happened? I remember watching when it happened.
I didn't watch it live. I remember it was in the news and everywhere, and I think it wasn't televised in Finland. I saw some footage later, but seeing it in the movie, it was a really nice experience.
Yeah, they did a wonderful job. When you were listening to Queen, what was the first thing that attracted you besides the music videos? Because they made incredible music videos. The songs are super hooky. But was there a specific element within their musicianship that you gravitated to?
Well, a difficult question now. I think definitely was the music videos and very catchy songs that kind of had my attention. And then there was really a lot of variety in the songs. And of course, later when I've been listening more Queen, there's all kind of stuff there. Well, one only needs to listen to Bohemian Rhapsody, and there's all kind of stuff happening there. It's not punk rock. It's definitely, there's so much happening, and so crazy skilled musicians, and Freddie's voice, of course.
Yeah. He's one of a kind.
One of a kind.
One of a kind, yeah. The next band on your list is Metallica. And I think most metalheads have, at some point in time, Metallica played a role on their love for heavy music. I think for me, they were kind of like the bridge that took me from like hard rock, Queen, AC/DC, that kind of like even hair metal into the heavier stuff. Was that the same for you?
Yeah, definitely. Like it was Queen, Aerosmith, AC/DC, that kind of stuff. Before I got the Metallica's Black Album as a Christmas present, I was 13. And before that, I remember there was this charts program in television, like Finland Top 40 or something. And I was watching it, and Enter Sandman video came. I was like, wow, well, this is cool. I want to have this album. Mom and Dad, can I have this for Christmas? And I got it. I remember it was we were at my grandparents' place Christmas, and I got the album. It was Christmas night. I was in the kitchen by myself, really dark outside, listening to the Black Album by myself, and wow, now this is so cool. Like, I want more of this. So it's what really is the bridge metal. It started with Metallica, of course, and first 5 albums are really dearest to me, like many other people as well. And lately, the new albums haven't been maybe that super awesome, but the old stuff, of course, forever in my heart.
So once you got the Black Album and once you digested that album, did you immediately said, okay, I have to go back and listen to what they've done before? Did you do that? Like go back to the previous records?
Yeah. Like many of my friends were having this process in the same time. So we were borrowing the CDs and copying the cassettes and doing that kind of stuff. And so I quickly got all the 5 albums that they had released at that point. And very soon after that, I started playing the bass as well. Like, I want to do this myself also. I want to be a heavy metal musician. That's how it started.
And that begs the question. I mean, if you were playing bass on Injustice for All, would that album sound better?
Jason is awesome. Like, one of my early idols, of course. Nobody can top that. Good thing that they remastered the album.
I think they still kept the bass off. Because if I remember correctly, they didn't have the original bass recordings or something, so they didn't remaster it with the bass on. That's what I heard. I'm not sure.
I don't know, but I think I've heard some version which actually sounds like there is a bass. I don't know if somebody played it there or
Maybe.
what they did actually, but it sounds sturdier, more heavy.
From those Metallica early on albums, which one is your favorite? I know you started with the Black Album, so obviously that one plays a huge role for you. But overall, from their first albums, like if you had to pick one, maybe outside of the Black Album, which one is your favorite?
It's Ride the Lightning, and actually, the first song that I learned with bass was For Whom the Bell Tolls, and it starts with a bass solo. It's kind of tricky thing. First thing you get the bass. Okay, play this. So I started with that. Definitely Ride the Lightning, also Master of Puppets, maybe those 2, and Black Album, of course. So if I have to pick 3 albums, it's those 3 albums.
I have for me personally, the Ride the Lightning is number 1. Master of Puppets is like 1.5. Like, it's so close. The 2 are very close for me. Yeah, but the reason I always gravitate to Ride the Lightning is because of Fade to Black. I just feel like that is such an incredible song. It's just, that was one of the songs that sold me. Like, after listening to the Black Album, I went back, just like you, I went back. And when I had heard Ride the Lightning, the album, and I hear Fade to Black, I was like, wow, this song has everything. It's a ballad, it's heavy. Like, I mean, like, there's everything here. So, like, it's like a buffet.
It is, and I think probably one of the first kind of heavy metal ballads out there, and it doesn't sound any like weepy material. It sounds really convincing. It's still heavy metal, and it's something that when you were a teenager and you can still dig it, like, oh, this is heavy metal, but it's kind of soft, but it's still cool. Yeah, I love it. So it's a really cool song, and of course, and For Whom the Bell Tolls, that maybe my number 1 favorite Metallica song.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we used to make the mixtapes, like we put like different songs from different bands on a mixtape. And I remember making a tape for a girlfriend, and I wanted to make a tape just with ballads because she didn't want to listen to heavy stuff. And I'm like, do I include Fade to Black on this tape? Because I don't think she's gonna, do I put it there? I remember struggling with that song because it had so much. It's heavy still. It's still a very heavy track.
It's a heavy track, yeah.
What was the first song you learned on bass from Metallica?
From the Bell Tolls, yeah.
From the Bell Tolls?
That was the first, yes.
Wow.
And then what else? Well, Enter Sandman, of course, but and Four Horsemen, Whiplash. Like, we played a lot of Metallica covers in the beginning. Like, everybody started listening Metallica, and then they got into heavy metal. It happened to all of us.
Yeah. It's a universal thing. The next band on your list, it's really interesting. Sentenced. How big of an impact do you credit them for the way Insomnium sounds now?
Yes, huge impact. And Sentence was one of the bands that got me into more extreme metal after I have found already Metallica. And I remember first time listening in some kind of chart program from the radio, 40 in Finland, something like that. And it was, let's see, 95. Sentence had released Amok album, and they played Nepenthe in radio. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And I realized, okay, it's a Finnish band. I first heard the song and it sounds really convincing that, oh, these guys are from Finland and they're quite young, like under 20, and so influential. Like, so Sentence became one of the bands that really influenced Insomnium in the beginning, and we were all listening to Sentence and some other similar bands, but Sentence was the first kind of sort of death metal band I got into. And even they were a really versatile band. They had all kind of different stuff. It wasn't just blast beats and growling. It was really versatile, kind of reached to death metal in a sort of way. And Amok album already is a lot different than the first albums, which are more brutal and aggressive and more death metal. Mm-hmm. Amok was kind of rich that world. So hugely influential band for us.
When you look at them, do they have one thing that makes them as special as they are, or the reason why they're so special is a combination of different factors?
Songwriting, a sense of melody. It's something. It sounds very Finnish, and Nicola was the lead guitarist and composed most of the songs. He really had a special kind of sense of melody, and I think that's the thing. And like they changed singers. Jarva, the first singer, and then Ville Laihela, the guy who sang with clean vocals. They're very different, and it's still a great band. Like the band evolved a lot from very brutal death metal to something totally different, like almost like rock band in the end. Still, the songwriting was excellent all the time, and they managed to totally change their style and still be really convincing. And even they changed the singer and changed some other members, but still, the songwriting was always top-notch.
When a band like that calls it quits, as a fan, do you feel like there's always a light at the end of the tunnel? There's always a possibility, or do you feel like sometimes things are just best left where they are? Would you like to see them coming back?
I think the feeling was already when they quit the band that they will not return. They kind of made it really clear that they will never return. After Mika Tenkula died about 10 years ago, I think that was kind of last nail in the coffin that, okay, they will not make a comeback without Mika. And I think it's better that way. They respect the legacy and had their own thing, and they decided that, okay, time to quit and to do something else. But it's been really cool now working with Vesa Ranta, who was the Sentenced drummer, and he's been doing Insomnium videos. Like with the last album, we did 2 videos with him, and actually next week we are going to film some videos again, Vesa. So our paths have crossed, and is
that a cool thing for you? Like growing up listening to them, being a huge influence on you, and now working with a member of the band, maybe not making music, but still working together in a creative way. Is that fulfilling?
It is cool. It is cool, and of course now I'm kind of used to the idea because we've been working with him already for some years, and like in the beginning it was like, wow, we are working with this guy who was playing in Sentence, and it was so cool. And he's a really, really talented guy directing videos and also taking photographs. So he has another career now after Sentenced.
I find one thing about Finnish bands is when you guys call it quits, you really call it quits. I mean, there's no coming back for a reunion tour like North American bands where they call it quits, and then like 5 years later, the last tour, and then 5 years after that, one more last tour, you know, and it almost kind of ruins a little bit of the legacy, don't you feel?
Yes, it ruins, and it's kind of a, I don't know, American way of doing it. So like, okay, let's wait 5 years and then do a reunion and we'll get more money. And then wait 5 years. And I think in Finland, people are usually looking at like ruining the legacy. That's the thing. And I'm sure that Sentenced guys are also thinking the same thing, that you don't want to do something like that. It would look, some people wouldn't like it. And when Finnish bands quit, they really quit.
I think a good idea would be to do an anniversary show with nobody from the band, but other people from other bands playing some of their biggest songs. I think that would be super cool.
That would be cool, and that would be kind of respecting the legacy and
exactly
showing that how big impact they've made, especially in Finland, like where most heavy metal fans have. Like everybody loves Sentenced in Finland, and really influential band here. And from Finnish perspective, it's kind of hard to judge that how big they actually were in Europe and North America. But in Finland, they were a really big band.
The last band on your list is one of my favorite bands outside of Insomnium. I have to throw that one there. Outside of Insomnium, one of my favorite bands to come out of Finland, Amorphous.
Yes. Hugely influential band as well. So I think we've always said that in the beginning, when we started Insomnium 97, that two bands that influenced us most were Sentenced and Amorphous. And they those two bands, they both sound very Finnish, and there's a certain kind of melody and atmosphere that they share, even though they are different bands. They have influenced us a lot. And I really remember also the first time that I heard Amorphous, I went to a local record store. Kids, listen to this. Back in the days, you had to do this to find new music. I went to the record store and I found some compilation CD. I think it was a Nuclear Blast compilation or something, which had like 20 different bands. And I started listening it. Oh, this is shit. This is shit. This is shit. And then the Amorphous song starts. Forgotten Sunrise from Tales album. Oh, wow. Immediately hooked. Like, this is something special. Now, this is not some shitty shit stuff. Oh, this is good stuff. Finnish band and great stuff. And I got deeper into that kind of material after listening to Tales album, and hugely influential band. And also we toured with the Amorphous after that, and know the guys a little bit better, and also similar feeling than working with some Sentenced dudes. It's you're like, okay, I'm actually here working with these guys and side by side, and then you get used to the idea. But first it felt really funny that, okay, here we are with those guys, touring with those guys. But really awesome guys, all of them.
They have a very unique style. Like you said, both bands have a lot of similarities, but Amorphous is very unique in the way they make music. They have it has a very specific way of coming together, a very specific feeling, but it still has that Finnish DNA or their Finnish fragrance into it. But they also have evolved a lot over the time, and they haven't been a band necessarily that stayed, with one formula and stick to a formula. Where do you see them perhaps going next, as you've seen their evolution, as you've seen their growth?
Difficult question. And like with Sentenced, they have done the same thing, that they started as a death metal band, and then they have transformed into something else, and they've changed the singers, and they've gravitated towards something a bit more like rock or hard rock style. not very death metal anymore, but still they've remained awesome band. They write excellent songs, awesome music, and like very few bands can actually pull it off and keep their old fans. Like many bands, they change in the wrong way and they kind of lose what was cool about them in the first place, and they become something else. But Amorphis is one of those that they've done it in the right way. They still Amorphis, and when you listen to first albums and the new albums, even though they sound first really different, first albums are really harsh and brutal stuff. Sounds are really, but it's still Amorphis. It's the same sense of melody there, the same Finnish sound, and where they go next, let's see. It's interesting to see, and thought that the guys are making the album number 14 now.
Yeah, they're in the studio right now.
Yeah, so interesting to see what will come out of there.
I thought it was interesting. I mean, I'm not surprised you have two bands from Finland on your list, because obviously being in Finland, listening to the local metal scene, obviously you're going to have some influences. But I have a couple of questions for you about that. The first is, what is it so specific about Finnish metal that there's no other country in the world that bands can come out of that have that sense that once you listen to a song, doesn't matter what band it is, you listen to a song and you know this band is from Finland. There's just something, you can't put your finger on it. It's really hard, but the moment you listen to it, there's something specific about metal from Finland. Do you know what that is? Like what that it factor is?
It's hard to put into words. Like I would say it's the sense of melody and the atmosphere, and like Finnish music is very melancholic traditionally. So all the stuff that we have been listening as kids, the old Finnish music, it's very sad, and it has affected us as persons. We like melancholic music. So there is something in our DNA that we kind of share. We enjoy same kind of music, and it's hard to actually say that, okay, this is the thing. These chords make the Finnish sound, but there is something in there that we share. We have grown in this land and listened to the same artists, same kind of songs. It's in us in some way. Hard to explain.
Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with the Finnish sound, and it's hard for me to put it towards why. But if you go through my playlist, if you go through the list of my favorite bands or bands that I listen to on a regular basis, they're almost all from Finland. I just connected with that sense of darkness, that sense of somber. I don't know. There's just something that it makes you feel welcomed into it. You know, it has a warm embrace.
Yeah, I would say so, and it's dark. It's dark. It's still like inviting in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because Sweden is very much similar country with a similar kind of like climate, a lot of forest and stuff, but still they sound different. Swedish bands, they not quite that dark. Oh, there's different kind of darkness, but it's funny how bands from different countries, Swedish bands sound Swedish and Norwegian bands sound Norwegian. They have their own thing there. Yeah. Finnish band sounds Finnish, so that's an interesting topic.
The other question I had about you having two Finnish bands on your list, like I said, I wasn't surprised. I mean, it would be impossible for you to grow up there listening to local bands and not have those bands influence your style, your play, and Insomnium. But there's always this feeling from outside fans that there's perhaps a little bit of, I don't know, like not animosity, but there's a little bit of a rivalry between bands. Is that actually the case? Or do you feel like in Finland, in the metal scene, bands are more friends and there's more of a sense of camaraderie and not as much this internal rivalry to see who reaches the top?
I would say that Finland is so small country that very soon all the bands will know each other, and you play the same festivals and same clubs and tours, and everybody knows each other. And I think that's one thing that affects it, that we kind of support each other. And only if someone is a really dickhead or asshole, then you're like, okay, your band sucks. Otherwise, we support each other. We help our friends' bands. Or they don't even have to be our friends. Like if someone from other Finnish band contacts me and asks for advice, I will try to help them. Same way as we got help when we started our career. Guy from Eternal Tears of Sorrow band was one of those bands that were bigger back then. He just helped us with our first record contract. Like he was a good person. We really didn't even know him. I just sent him a message that, hi, do you know anything about record deals? And then he started helping us. I think that tells a lot about the attitude we have in Finland. Like bands really they tend to help each other and support each other, and not, there's a kind of friendly rivalry perhaps, but in a good way, in a positive way.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because that's the impression that I got when I was there in Finland 2 years ago, is that you guys are all there to support each other. And it's almost like if one makes it, we all make it. So there's a little bit of a sense of that.
Yeah, and that's exactly the case. And if one Finnish band gets attention outside Finland, it helps other bands as well. That people realize that, okay, they are making interesting music in Finland. What else could be there? And this is thing that happened in the 90s. That Morphis, Sentenced, Stratovarius, that kind of bands, they had some success outside Finland, and balls started rolling, and other Finnish bands came, and then Children Bottom and Nightwish and him and all that happened. And so if one makes it, then it helps the others as well.
Well, Niilo, thank you very much for your time today, man. I really appreciate chatting with you. This was so much fun to talk about your influences and your history, and Jean-Michel Jacques. I got to give him another shout out, because I don't think he gets enough love. He doesn't get enough love. So we have to give him some love. When I saw his name on your list, I was like, oh, this is funny, because like I grew up listening to him. So I thought that was really interesting. We have a lot of things in common. So I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. All the best. Have fun recording those videos, because I know I'll have fun watching them later on the channel.
Yeah. And have a great time in snowy Canada.
All right. Take care, man.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.